Good morning and welcome back to the One Celtic Fans View this morning. It is Tuesday the 9th of September and where do we go from today? I think that we all need to I know that a lot of people will be getting fed up of this already, and people will be saying, look, let's just focus on the football. That's exactly what the board will want us to do. Tomorrow evening there is a meeting with the Celtic supporters groups as they formulate a way forward. There will be a meeting, and I think the best thing that can actually happen is that Brendan Rodgers goes total old school and just turns up at the meeting to the fans, and he sits and he listens to what the fans have to say, and he gives his version of events. Because unless we know the truth from Brendan Rodgers, we need to back Brendan Rodgers and the team as much as we can going forward. I think anything that has a direct influence on a negative effect on the team can be harmful going forward. But we'll wait and see what happens. If you're looking for a new podcast to go and watch, there was a fantastic one that was on last night. And if you go into the community tab, you will see the link to the podcast and go and subscribe to the guys. Absolutely fantastic. Celtic news-wise, it is all about negative headlines when it comes to Celtic. And I knew that they would have this. You've now got the Daily Record pulling out content from 2020 season, putting out things that Neil Lennon said in 2020. They've not spoke to Neil Lennon to date. They're just bringing out old content. But it's all about hitting home that the Celtic supporters are unhappy, and it's saying that basically Neil Lennon thinks it's the wrong thing. Now, he said it was the wrong thing back then. Will he say it's the wrong thing now? He may well do, because he's good friends with Peter Lawwell and the board and stuff. But where do we go? Ultimately, where does the fans go from here? And it'll be interesting to find out the outcome of the meeting. We're all sitting just waiting on this meeting tomorrow night now, and we'll see which way the organisations that are heading this. And there is everyone. I mean, there's over 400 signatories now to the fact that Celtic fans won't change. They do want change, and we'll see what happens with it then. Anyway, let's jump into some comments this morning and see what people are saying to it. A lot of people saying good morning to Stephen Johnson. Let's jump back to this. A lot of people saying that Brendan Rodgers will now go to Notts Forest. No, he won't. Ange Postecoglou has been tipped already by our transfer guru from Italy. He's been tipped for the job, and I always says that Ange would end up with that job because it's an easy fit for him. It's a team that is seen as struggling, and it'll get him back into the English Premiership to prove people wrong. Brendan Rodgers will not be leaving Celtic. Even if he was offered the job, Brendan Rodgers would turn it down. He's not leaving Celtic before the end of this season. So yeah, I think that Ange Postecoglou will get that one. Let me just jump through there. Stephen Johnson's in the house this morning. It's going to be a good morning, or a sad one. It's going to be a great morning, Stephen. Do you know? We all need to show we were 100% behind the team and the manager. No matter what Brendan Rodgers thinks of some people, at the end of the day, we are Celtic, not the Suits. Yeah, and that's true. When you look at some of the stuff that's been written out there, and one of the best articles that I've seen yesterday was from Joe McHugh, who was on the podcast with me last night. And he was talking about Ian Jamieson, the Celtic PR guru. Yeah, a guy that's been at Celtic for longer than some fans have been born, sadly. He's been at Celtic for 20 years. And maybe that is what's wrong with Celtic. You know, there is no change of they think they're doing everything, and they are. I mean, there's going to be a lot of conversation now. You'll get fans saying, look, the board have been great for Celtic over the last 20 years. But you have to look at the way that things have went recently, and not just recently, the way that we've went over the years. And it all goes back to that statement. And when it comes to Celtic news, it is all just negative, 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 as you would expect. Ange Postecoglou is now the top contender to become the Nottingham Forest manager. There's some of the mainstream media in Scotland now running with that as well. Thank goodness. That's all I can say. When you look at the Celtic video yesterday, it was good to see that Celtic had changed the format of putting out short content from behind the scenes at Lennoxtown, and they went with a longer video. What you will see happening now at Celtic, you'll see it's basically love bombs are going to come out. We are basically still 6 clear. And when you look at what Celtic will do, this is my prediction on what Celtic will do. They'll increase the level of content that's going out there. They'll stop putting out as much content for paid subscribers only, and they'll ramp it up a little bit. As you've seen yesterday, they started doing that with the whole Lennoxtown thing. I thought it was, if it wasn't put out yesterday, if it was put out a couple of weeks before, you would have said that, yeah, Celtic are changing it up a bit. They're trying, but it seems Celtic are always reactive. And I think that's been the biggest problem that a lot of people think that's wrong with Celtic. The fact that they are reactive and they're not on the front foot. You know, they're not pushing forward, and that comes right through to transfer policies and all the rest of it. Anyway, shut the press up. Let's go out and win the next game. Shut people in the press up, says Dave Morton. Yep. I'm just reading some of the comments here. Who cares about Ange? Yep. Let's just see. Not one pod mentions the elephant in the room. And it's what cost the new board to pay. I spoke about it last night, Thomas, and we have to be at a point now where we have to have a timeline of events. And I think tomorrow night will be people agreeing on the way forward. But if the objective is to have a change of the hierarchy at Celtic, we need to have a timeline for that, because we can't let it get too late, too close to the next window, and we cannot let it roll on to the summer, because if Brendan Rodgers is to leave, and it's a big if, I think that there could still come a situation where Brendan Rodgers extends his contract for 1 year. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Brendan Rodgers was to extend his contract for 1 year. And if you think about it, if there is a change at the top, if you're Brendan Rodgers and you're watching this scenario playing out, if there is a change at the top, we need some kind of stability within the club. There's no use changing the chairman, the CEO, and the finance guy and all the rest of it. I mean, that's a massive change in direction for any organisation to undertake in one go. You can sometimes become rudderless in that situation. If you're then to become managerless also at the exact same time, it's what's the way forward? Do you know, we end up bringing in a Sean Maloney type manager, which would be disastrous for the club as far as I'm concerned. So I think that Celtic will need to, Celtic fans will need to think of the objective that they're trying to achieve, and they'll need to try and achieve it within certain timelines if it's going to be achieved. They will try their utmost for it to happen, but my fear is if you let it go too close to the end of the season, Brendan Rodgers comes out and says, look, I'm leaving. You get rid of the board, you've then got to bring in a new board who's got to bring in a new manager, and that on its own opens up a whole can of worms. And I just think that that's when you'll start seeing splits in the fan base, and I don't want that to happen. I want to make sure that we're going forward as a one. It'll be a yes man, the board won't change. Like, we're not wanting, the thing is we don't want rid of Brendan Rodgers at the moment. It would be, you would lose the league. If Brendan Rodgers was chased out the door just now, and I think that the board would love him. There's a fucking wasp in here. Where the fuck did that get in? Wait a minute. Wasp attack. Yeah, I think that if Brendan Rodgers was to walk right now, it would be completely disastrous for the club. And I think that we would definitely lose the league. And I don't think that there would be a possibility that we wouldn't win anything this year. People talking about that you should just forget about Europe. It's not Brendan Rodgers' style. I think that Brendan Rodgers will want to go out and make sure that we put in a good shift and a good account of ourselves. Because it wouldn't be the Celtic way to go into Europe and say, do you know what, I'm going to keep this player back. I'm not going to play this player in Europe because we're focusing on the league. That's not Brendan Rodgers' style. It's definitely not Brendan Rodgers' style. And I think that if he was to do that, and he's not that he will, he's not going to do it, it would be completely disastrous. Flying Com says, they know that Brendan is off in the summer, but won't be proactive about recruiting our next manager. Brendan Rodgers isn't going anywhere before the end of the season. Yep, I'm totally with that. But Brendan Rodgers, if it's already been decided by Brendan that he may leave, I mean, I don't think that it's 100% decided. It may be. Baz, do you think that Brendan Rodgers Sabres? Yes, Mark, I think that he would add another year on. A lot of journalists are now coming out and speculating that his next move, he wants a fresh. No, Brendan Rodgers is sat. Let's look at the reality of what we know. Brendan Rodgers is sat at a press conference and he said, his exact words were, there are a lot of people talking about what my situation is. Nobody knows outside me. I'm not even thinking about the long-term future. I'm just thinking about the season. So people putting out, I mean, Alan Nixon is one of them who put out a thing to say that Brendan Rodgers will leave at the end of the season and will go to Europe. What if he didn't get a job offer in Europe? Do you know? And it's all just speculation. It is pure speculation. Brendan Rodgers, if things were done right at Celtic, and if it has already been agreed that Brendan's leaving at the end of the season, there has to become a point. Say the boards are still in place after Christmas. We get through the next transfer window. There has to be a point before the end of the season that the board come. This is lots of big clubs around Europe do it. A lot of big clubs in Europe, they know that a manager will leave at the end of the season. They come out and tell the fans that the manager is leaving at the end of the season. And then they start forward planning for the next manager. So that as soon as the manager leaves at the end of the season, and it's within days. And this is the issue that we have with the Celtic board. They don't seem to be able to be that proactive. It's reactive. And he's not going for an international job more. He's too hands-on on a daily basis. International football's for managers that are kind of like way older than Brendan, I would say. I mean, I know there are a lot of younger managers. Just think about it hypothetically. If we win the Europa League and the league, would Brendan Rodgers leave? Says Dave, we are not. Dave, there is no way that Celtic Football Club are in any fit state to get near a Europa League final. I can't see it. There's maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, maybe they could have got to the later stages of Europe, but I just don't think it's going to. It's never going to happen. Anyway, make sure that you go to the Trinity Tim's podcast and subscribe to them. I think they've got 1,200 odd subscribers. It's run by a fantastic bunch of guys that know their stuff about Celtic. And they have written about Celtic for a long, long time. Very knowledgeable guys, and make sure that you subscribe to that podcast. I will put the link in this stream, and then and it was great to be asked onto their channel, and I'll pin the message so that you can get that. So, moving forward. Hypothetically, yeah, it is hypothetically, but I can't see it happening at all. Let's see some of the Brendan Rodgers and ex-Celtic boss A 3-man shortlist. Yeah, you've got to love publications, Scottish media publications, because half an hour ago the same publication says it's Ange Postecoglou's job all day long. He's the favourite, and then they've got to add Brendan Rodgers into the mix, haven't they? And I don't believe that Brendan Rodgers will be anywhere near it. Just looking at some of the headlines that are out there this morning. An hour ago, Ange Postecoglou's top contender to become the new Nottingham Forest manager. An hour later, Brendan Rodgers, an ex-Celtic Tottenham boss, to see Nottingham Forest. Who cares? Who cares? Right, I'm not staying on far too long this morning. Let's just jump in. Subscribe to the news. Yeah, they're absolutely fantastic guys, mate. Absolutely fantastic guys over on that channel. So, where do we think? I mean, tell me in the comments, what do you think needs to happen next with... I mean, what can the fans do? What would you like to see happen? Because the conversation now has to be with as many of the fans as possible. We have to be in agreement the way that we go forward, and it's going to be interesting, the press conference this Friday. That's going to be the interesting one. And I wish that Brendan Rodgers just walked through the door of the CSA on Wednesday night, and just, because I think that if Brendan Rodgers was to do that, I think he'd get a standing ovation by the fans. I think he'd honestly get a standing ovation. After the Sun put out the Brendan Rodgers is the issue thing on Saturday morning, I think that the fans will come together and back the manager. And I know that a lot of people want rid of Brendan Rodgers. Look, you'll get that at some point in the future. Baz just did the press thing that you've written down. Yeah, this is true. I would like to see Nicholson and Tisdale leave. A 50+1 fan-controlled Celtic. I don't know if that would happen. Sam Mack is banned for this channel anyway, so you'll never see him on this channel. I didn't see any of the comments, but I got a message about it last night. Of course, the big AI scored last night for Alan. Yes. Adam Eder scoring again. He's going to be on fire. I still feel sorry for Adam Eder. I couldn't understand the hate that he got, considering he scored 20 odd goals last season. Paul Baird says, definition, stop buying merch. Yeah, Paul, that's something that I've been saying for a while. I think that has to be the way forward, and we have to have some kind of... we're all going in the right direction. There's never been a time at Celtic. What's it in Germany? Why not Celtic, Baz? I'm talking about fan control. When you have a club the size of Celtic and the stock exchange, and you have so many organisations that have a vested interest in the Celtic, it's all about long-term investment and the share price going up. That can never change. You know, that was something that Fergus McCann brought in. It was to take us away from ownership from one individual. I mean, we've got somebody that's got 35% of Celtic, and he thinks that he runs the club. Maybe that's what needs to change. Maybe his voting power, the board need to turn around and say to Dermot, we don't need to come to you to pass it. We're a board of directors. You might be the biggest shareholder, but you don't own you only own 35% of the club. You know, it doesn't give him an overall majority. You can overrule anything. With the organisation, the way that the club is set up, we can overrule anything that Dermot Desmond says, because he isn't the majority. He's the majority owner, but at 35%, you know, that means nothing really. I'm just sick of the Celtic. It's a nightmare, says Jim F. I think Brendan Rodgers will take a year out like he was going to do before he came along. It could be a possibility, and maybe he has thought about that. But my worry about the current situation is, if we do change hierarchy, it is a worry for me that you're then going to have a hierarchy that comes in. You're going to have to bring in people with good football knowledge. You know, I think we missed the boat when we brought in the guy from Edinburgh Rugby. He would have been fantastic for Celtic. And I don't think that we would be in this situation just now. If he wasn't chased out of Celtic, I don't think that he would be chased. I don't think that Celtic would be in the situation just now. I think we'd been going down a completely different road. I suspect that Brendan may have requested someone from the club join him in the press. Listen, the media guy is always at Brendan's side. The PR guru, who is Ian Jameson, is always at the side of every single press conference. He's there, and he's the one that you hear shouting, right, that's it guys. You know, that they wind up the press conference, because they could go on and talk and talk and talk. He's the one that shouts for the side, right, that's it, questions are done, over and done with. You know, he's the one that keeps it at 25 minutes for Brendan Rodgers to get questioned. It'll just be interesting, the questions that do come Brendan Rodgers' way on Friday. What's going to be more fascinating to me is what player the club puts out in front of, or do they put one player out, or do they put two players out? And if it's the new players that have just came into the club, well, they're all seen as reactive buys, they're seen as last minute buys, they're seen as panic buys, and they'll get asked that. Need Martin O'Neill as director of football. I kind of think that's what Tisdale was brought in to oversee, the football department. Do you know? And I think that, would Martin O'Neill take up that position? That's what Tisdale was kind of brought in for, not a director of football as such, but I don't know. Brown Warrior says, as for Don Mackay, you could reappoint someone like him to run the club as a controlling vote, same as the manager, not reliant on some absentee landlord making the decisions. I think that Brendan may actually walk after the weekend. This board's a joke. No, he won't. He won't walk. He's already said in public, if he was to walk before the end of the season, what he said in public would come back to haunt him. And I don't think it. Brown Warrior says, if you think Celtic will change if these guys are replaced, sorry, you're deluded. Well, Brown Warrior, if a certain man that was in charge of the club hadn't been forced out, Celtic wouldn't be in this position. They're in this position because of the dinosaurs out there. Don Mackay was far too clever for this. Yeah, he was. And I think that, I always go back to the interview of him and Ange Postecoglou, and the two of them sitting at the table, very comfortable, and it was a new way of Celtic. It was a new open relationship with the media and fans and such like. And I think that we regressed from that deeply. You know, how was he forced out? Oh, Brown Warrior. I love your how was he forced out? Trust me, he was forced out. The only way Brendan walks is if he's sued for constructive dismissal. Can't see that. Nah. On the pitch, I just hope we see a different attitude by Dyson. He may have just been chucked in the till. Well, if you watch the Celtic video from yesterday, if you watch the Celtic training video, and it was all fast-paced, and this was clever by Brendan, because Brendan would have sanctioned the 5-minute long content, and Brendan would want to let the fans see that in training it's one-touch pass, fast-paced football, not side-to-side. Brendan Rodgers has been very clever the way the content that he's allowing the Celtic media to be put out. He's making sure that, you know, we do not want this slow side-to-side passing football. So you put out a training video, one-touch pass. You know, you've got various coaches talking about the movement of players when other teams make passes and how to counter-attack it and then get back into the one-touch fast, you know, attacking football. It was very clever by Brendan. And this is why I've said that there is a power struggle at Celtic. And it will be played out through Celtic media. The backroom staff need to go as well. I do think that there needs to be a freshen up of the backroom staff, although there was a foreign guy in the backroom staff. I'm just sick of all this talk about let's get back to football. Dave, this won't go away. It won't go away. And you will get fans, and this is what the hierarchy at Celtic will want. They will start putting out as much content that will be love bombs as possible, and they will want the Celtic fans to start to split. Because when the Celtic fans start to split, and it's good right now, I don't think that the Celtic fan base that go to games are 100% united. Now, I'm not saying that it is 100% of the fan base that go, but the organisations that take big numbers to games is the important one, and that's the ones that need to be listened to. When it was put out yesterday that the signatories, over 400 signatories that we have to the letter that's going to go into the board, it will have the names and contact numbers and everything of each individual signatory, so that the board know that this is not just a made up list. They know that this is people, and they'll be able to check from the database on Celtic FC that every single one of these are real people, because we're all putting in our email addresses that are linked to our Celtic tickets, and you know, lots of ads on this live this morning. Is there? Shouldn't be any ads on the live this morning. Wait about that. Sorry about that, just switched it back off. Why was that on? YouTube changing things. Apologies about that, I've just switched it off. I didn't know that it was on. YouTube must have automatically changed it. You should have told me earlier. Anyway, we are all entitled to our opinion. Sorry, I want fast-paced football and training. Want it against opponents. Love it. The manager can only show the fans what is happening. People complain about not seeing enough content from Celtic, and then when they do see enough content from Celtic that shows that the manager and everyone in training is trying to get the Celtic team to play this way, and then there's the negativity comes out. It's absolutely bonkers. Anyway, that's me done and dusted for this morning. I will be back to being live at 8 PM Celtic Park time tonight. Where we can talk about a few things going forward and talk about getting back to football. It is all about getting back to football. We do have a game this weekend, and it'll be interesting to see what team Brendan Rodgers picks this weekend and who will be our number one striker. On that note, have an absolutely fantastic morning, Celtic fans, wherever you are, all around the world.